Hello, hello. Okay. So, good morning, classmates. Good morning, everyone. So, today I will be reporting Church History 2, the last part of our syllabus is assigned to me. So, so what is the contents for my report is rationalism, liberalism, neo-orthodoxy, evangelicals, neo-evangelicals, and Pentecostals, mission and ecumenism, and cults, specifically Mormons, Seventh-day Adventists, and Jehovah's Witnesses. So first, let us talk about rationalism, liberalism, and neo-orthodoxy. We can see here that the existence of reason. We can see that the emphasis of reason is quite big in the part of this uh, movements and theologies. But specifically, the people or the humanity tends to believe that there's a deity, and if there's something that's beyond their reason or explanation, they live it that way. They believe that there's someone who is greater than everyone. There's a sovereign one, not just a supreme being. When we say a supreme being, he's still a being. He's part of the creation. But the people believe that there's a sovereign one. But then during the 18th century, the rise of the reason happened. So first, let us talk about rationalism, an attitude that reached its apex in the 18th and 19th centuries, was characterized by its interest in the world, by its confidence in the powers of reason. You can see rationalism championed the confidence in the power of reason. But how it was developed? This so happened during the 30 Years' War and French Revolution, which was greatly influenced by deism. Therefore, we can see here that the root of rationalism was from deism. So, what is deism? Now, before I explain deism, let's see first the French Revolution. French Revolution is quite different from the movements in the past where it was driven by their yearn for freedom in a Christian way or like the Reformation, right? But the French Revolution was quite different. They aim to emphasize the sovereignty of man, which was the core teaching that we can see in deism. Deism was discovered by Nicholas Copernicus and popularized by Galileo Galilei, a theory that aims to explain God's existence through human's reason. If you can explain your God through reason, he doesn't exist. Simply as that. No, but this was replaced by Darwin's natural law of selection. Now we can see here no, that deism has quite explanation or meaning. But because this so happened because they want to see human as equal of God. So why it's that? Because as we all know, we cannot explain God exhaustively. We only knew him through his revelation, but this was not accepted during this time. Therefore, they tried to explain God's existence through human thought. That's why it seems that God is equal with human. And it was replaced eventually by Darwin's natural law of selection, mm, who is the champion of evolution, Charles Darwin. And we can see there that the existence of God is not there. Everything uh, proce- is in process, in a natural process, and it develops through time. And they believe that the revelation is the nature itself. So the next one is liberalism, political doctrine that takes protecting and enhancing the freedom of the individual to be the central problem of politics. We can see here that it is produced through their aim to free an individual, no, those who are in slavery, those who are in a slave or under of social statuses or castes, and that monarchy, they actually aim for that, the destruction of the monarchy. So this the founders are John Locke, an English philosopher, and Adam Smith, a Scottish economist, aims to free people from being preoccupied by individualism, which resulted for them to become slaves of status, social status, and tradition. We can see that it has a great focus in human freedom. Next is, so it was adopted by Christians at that time. No, they put a theological explanation to that. That's why it's born. Theological liberalism holds on to God's immanence and aims to explain God's existence through reading the Bible in a scientific method rather than seeing it as a revelation from God. We can see here how the influence of reason increases, that even in reading the Bible, they aim to explain it in a scientific method. No? They try to uh, ignore the revelation from God. They do not consider the words of God, the history itself that's written in the Bible as a revelation of God through his acts and words written on it. But eventually lost its influence in 1930 when Barth said that God was transcendent rather than immanent, and man was sinful rather than born with the spark of the divine in him. So we can see here that Karl Barth defeated this way of thinking through seeing God as transcendent, because we may say that we can see that God's immanence means, no, how God involved himself in the history. So therefore, they explain it in a scientific way and lower down God, that they may see lower down the level of God, that they may see God as equal of humans, because humans were born with a spark of divine in him, because God created humans in the same image or in his image. Therefore, they're quite the same. But then Karl Barth defeated it. No, he said that God is transcendent rather than immanent. Meaning transcendent in the sense that he is far greater than anyone. He's the sovereign one. No one can know who created him or if he's really created. Or we can say that he is not created. He's the one who created everything. He's the creator himself. He he reveals his existence not because he has a limited abilities, but because he has a infinite ability. His nature is infinity, eternal. No? Therefore, he can engage himself in a finite earth in a limited time because he is infinite and eternal. So the next one is the orthodoxy theology of crisis, or we can also uh, call it existential theology. It has a many names. No, the theology of crisis because how it was born, and existential theology, that explains so its point as a theology. Dominated during 1930 to 1950, but lost its domination during 1960 due to being more existential and subjective through the writings of Tillich and Boltzmann. A very short time only. So how it was born, no, it is written, no? In the Christianity to the Centuries, a history of the Christian Church by Kearns, said that two destructive global wars, the Great Depression and the diabolic nature of right and left wing of totalitarianism after World War I, made liberalism increasingly irrelevant and neo-orthodoxy more historically and theologically feasible. We can see that because of the war, the liberalism has lost its significance. This has That's why the neo-orthodoxy is risen in the picture, no, because they see that historically and theologically that the orthodoxy is more, it seems so more right, no, more feasible to their. So because it is called theology of crisis because it has risen during a crisis, and it helps those people to understand their situation. And it was founded by Karl Barth. Now, who is Karl Barth? No? He initiated Neo-Orthodoxy, who was born in Basel, Switzerland, but received a liberal theological training in Germany. Now, we can see Karl Barth is a son of rationalism and liberalism. No? He even had a liberal theological training in Germany. There, the needs of his parishioners and the inadequacy of his liberal theology drove him to the scriptures and the writings of John Calvin. He then taught theology in German theological institution from 1921 until 1935, when his opposition to Nazi religious policy forced him to go to Basel. We can see here how he developed the orthodoxy, no, from his foundation of liberal theology. We can and when he was drove to his interest to the scriptures and the writings of John Calvin, a new theology sparked. That's why it's called neo-orthodoxy. No? Then it is happened during the opposition to Nazis. That's why this was the time, no, a crucial time there. So we can see what defeated liberalism because of his stand. We can see here his stand. No? God is wholly other than man, no? An eternally transcendent, holy being. Man is helplessly finite and sinful. The Bible is a human book, subject to biblical criticism like any other book. It is a record of revelation and a witness to revelation rather than being inspired, objective, historical, propositional revelation in itself. We can see here, you know, the difference of man and God. We can see that man is finite and sinful, but God is eternally transcendent and holy being and is wholly other than man. We can see the true difference from the word that helplessly finite and sinful. Finite and God is eternally transcendent. Sinful. Human is sinful, but God is holy, without blemish, blameless. We can see here how he defeated that, and it's unexplainable. And we only knew that because God let us know about him through his revelation, not through objective historical propositional revelation in itself. The next is evangelicals, new evangelicals, and Pentecostals. These are uh, religious groups, you can say, and how they came into life. So evangelicals, the careless living of enlightenment gave way to personal piety to faith in Christ that, and to philanthropic social activity, American evangelicals from 1800 to 1859 worked through a benevolent empire of voluntary non-denominational societies dedicated to achieve these aims of conversions and reform at home and abroad. Missions in imperial territories often preceded the flag and trade. Oh, we can see, no, evangelicals came from the word evangelion, which means good news. Therefore, the meaning of evangelicals is the bearer of good news. Oh, we can see here that it was a fruit of personal piety or the deep sense of importance to the Christian practices, reading the Bible, praying, so on like that, and makes Christian more a better person or a better person itself. We can see that it was inspired by the Reformation happened in England, during the time when the Anglican Church was born. So, what is the identity of evangelicals during that time? The evangelicals were not so much interested in polity and doctrine as in the practical expression of Christianity in a redeemed life of piety that gained its inspiration from Bible study and prayer. We can see here what does it mean by piety. No? They focus on reading the Bible, praying. No, they do not give much time in polity and doctrine. And we can see eventually that evangelicals has also a great sense of importance in doing mission. No, evangelicals. And actually, no, same with us. No, we also call ourselves evangelicals. The next one is neo-evangelicals, best expressed in Fuller Seminary, which was founded in 1947 with mainstream faculty loyal to biblical inerrancy and premillennialism. We can see its difference. No, they agreed that the Bible was inerrant for faith and Bible, but using biblical criticism, they held to the possibility of error in history, geography, and numbers. We can see the difference. The evangelicals focus only on pietism, but these they they tend to believe the importance of biblical criticisms to prove the inerrancy of the Bible. Oh, that's more different. They only even though they believe also in the revelation of God, no, they also aim to explain it, unlike the evangelicals. No, and they also believe in the era of history, geography, and numbers. No, they accept the human nature of the Bible, but it doesn't mean it changes the meaning or the truth of the Bible. Yes, it is imperfect through grammar, it is imperfect through uh, how it was written, but then the truth about God, the revelation of God in the Bible is true. And they also believe in premillennialism, an idea and point, an eschatological point of view, where they take those written in the Revelation in a literal way, like the 1,000 years and everything written in it on what will happen next. And we can see that the name of this is Neo Evangelicals, where it means the young evangelicals, neo or new. Its literal meaning. So the next is Pentecostal or charismatics. No? This is quite still popular. No? One of the most and the fastest increasing uh, uh, Christians, born early 1900s. So, what are the famous denominations? No, it is the Assemblies of God and Church of God. Frequently believe the gift of the Spirit is marked by speaking in tongues, which was also called the third blessing. Its founders are Charles Parham, and Agnes Osman, were actually from Methodist tradition. No, these people, Charles Parham, actually, as far as I know, is a Methodist before he became before he championed or founded Pentecostal and Charismatic. And we can see here, I would like to emphasize its difference. They believe that you need to be baptized by the Spirit, and how you may know that you are baptized in the Spirit when you speak in tongues. It is part of their conversion, the speaking in tongues. But then the traditionals doesn't accept this. They call it the gibberish because it's quite the theology between the theology and how we understand the speaking in tongues was quite different from how the Pentecostals understand the speaking in tongues. We believe that speaking in tongues were not somehow that you change your language in but in the Bible we can see that even though they changed their language, they were able to be understood by the people around them. But this, I think most of the Pentecostals see that speaking in tongues as gibberish or inaudible. They speak in an inaudible words that we cannot understand. No, therefore, it's not the authentic speaking in tongues that was being discussed or narrated in the book of Acts. So, so, so that's it for this. So the next part is mission ecumenism. Mission. This has begun during the Great Century, which was initiated by William Carey during 1792. The reason why it is called the Great Century because this was the time the great efforts for mission started, and we can see as we discuss how it was called the Great Century and what were the efforts were made. No, this was an amazing part of the history. We can see how the Christians uh, flew, all over the world for the sake of doing God's Great Commission, Jesus Christ's Great Commission. The missionary enthusiasm was the result of revivalism among the Pietists and Methodists and among the evangelicals of the Anglican Church. People wanted to convert others to the same joyous religious experience they had. We can see, it is because they find that everyone must feel what they feel, experience what they experience under God's wonderful love through understanding the Bible, understanding Christ. This was the essence of mission. We can see, the necessity of doing it, no, through the history. So we can see there are many mission movements that was created during this time in the early 18 and 1900s, and we can see that how the early Christians yearned to express their faith, oh, to other people and invite them to be a follower of Christ also. So the first we can see here is the movement in India and even China, which was strongly does believe in a Christian God because their major uh, religion is Taoism and Buddhism. We can see here that what were the missionary movements that was born the time? The first was founded by William Carey himself, not like rather than but was founded through the inspiration of William Carey's vision. The Baptist Missionary Society, founded in Kettering, England, in 1795. London Missionary Society. This was founded by the Congregationalists, 1796 and 1797. Scottish Missionary Society, and the Glasgow Missionary Society were founded by Scottish Presbyterians. Church Missionary Society was founded by the Evangelicals. 1817 Wesleyan Missionary Society founded by the Methodists. 1865 China Inland Mission founded by J. Hudson Taylor. So we can also see the notable persons during the Great Century. First one is Amy W. Carmichael. Now rescued girls from prostitution in pagan temples in India. Mary Slessor worked for nearly 40 years before attaining great success in mission. Wow. No, Mary Livingstone explored Central Africa for mission. Anne Hudson helped her husband in translating the Bible. Robert Moffat translated the Bible in the language of the important tribes of South Africa. And David Livingstone fought the Arab slave trade, which was destroying potential village preaching centers. So we can see here that mission actually doesn't only focus on sharing the good news, but also putting it into action. Now, this was a good nature. This is the reason why I emphasize this. Now, we should see that mission is not simply teaching the word of God, but seeing how we stand on it. We testify on it through our lives, not only by our mouth. And we can see it even into the early Christians, how they stand on their faith, which was passed up to these people, and hopefully up to this generation we can experience this, that during the time we uh, go to a mission, spread the word, which we should also spread the word not only through our mouth, but through the testimony, how we do our work as missionaries. So that's what I want to emphasize here. Ecumenism, a movement which promotes unity of the churches despite the denominations and difference in doctrine and practice. This is the, what I can say, the favorite part of my report. We can see here that despite the difference in faith expressions, doctrines, they still aim to become one. No, because the emphasis of to Jesus' prayer that they may become one. This is the emphasis of ecumenism, and we can see that ecumenism from the word oikumene, which means household, and ecumenism that we are a household of God, therefore we are one. No, it's also emphasized in the Bible that we are different parts, but then we still have one head. Therefore, ecumenism emphasizes also. That's why the unity of other denominations is important. So we can see here, promoted by evangelicals with the founding of the Evangelical Alliance in London in 1848 and in America in 1867. So there are types of or kinds of ecumenism that happen all over the world. The first one is interdenominational cooperation, a widespread cooperation founded by American Bible Society and was born out of plan of the union by the Congregationalist and Presbyterian, so that they may fill the shortage of pastors on the frontier. We can see because of the need, the other way, because of the present need in their time, they tend to unite so that they can respond to the need that they saw. So the other one is organic union. Occurs when separate denominations give up a corporate existence to form a new denomination. It has been easier to achieve organic reunions when there have been similar backgrounds of theology, polity, and those who were alike in theology. Organizations were merged after World War One, but those who were unlike theology and organization formed a new name, way of organization, developing new theologies adapted from their difference where they can meet. You can see the organic union. Now, first type is that when they have the same theology, doctrine, polity, and rights, they can easily merge or become one and just, I think, made a new name. And the other one, even though there's difference in their polity, in the theology and rights, they just adapted, no, the difference where they can meet and made a new name for their denomination. Na the other one is confederations. National confederation system of ecclesiastical confederation thus far developed. The the cooperating units maintains their sovereignty but cooperate to achieve ends of common interest to the participating group. We can see here that they are a group, but they are not united in they are it's uh, they are in a group, but the sovereignty or the freedom, the autonomy of each group is still present. It's like a conference. We can we can see that there are different local churches. They group themselves, but then no, the autonomy in the local churches was still there, still present, but they meet because they want to cooperate to achieve such ends. You know? I think the best example for this is the here in Alfonso is the Alfonso Ministerial Fellowship. The Ministerial Fellowship where the churches meet, no, to plan, to engage in social works, but then the autonomy in polity in church governance are intact in every local churches. So, what are the confederations, councils appeared during this time? Uh, First is Federal Council of Churches of Christ. Churches that are in the council are involved in social actions. They made a creed called the Social Creed of of the churches, which supports social needs, which fights child labor, minimum wage living, provision for arbitration of individual disputes. But their problem, they have a weak theology. So therefore, they were succeeded by National Council Churches of Christ. We can see here, due to weak theology, the FCCC, or the Federal Council of Churches of Christ, were seized by the liberals, which led them to join NCCC. This has the same goal but connected to a larger organization. Then, the World Christian Fundamentals Association was organized in 1919 by W.B. Riley. The other opposed to oppose modernism. The American Council Churches was organized in September 1941 to dispute the claim of Federal Council to speak for all Protestants. And the last one is the National Association of Evangelicals, was founded in 1942. It is more ironic than the American Council, but no less true to the historic faith of Christianity. The organization has an evangelical statement of faith that denomination, local churches, individuals accept. So the other one is International Confederation, where it extends, um, in an international platform. Denomination have set up international organization into which the same denominations in other nations can work operatively to advance the interests of denominations throughout the world. We can see here that this was made, no, international organizations with the same denomination, meaning No, this is a group or an organization of local churches around the world that has the same denomination or same doctrine, theology, and everything. No, and that's why we can see the examples here. In 1875, founded the World Presbyterian Alliance. No, we can hear this alliance of Presbyterian local churches in the world. Same way 1905 the Baptist World Alliance, 1947 Lutheran World Federation, the world in 1947 also the World Pentecostal Conference, 1951 World Methodist Council, and 1854 that World Christian Council that I think this it is still existing during this time. I don't know. So now that's all for ecumenism and mission. So let's go on the cults, where we will specifically discuss about three cults or religions only. First one is Mormons, founded by Joseph Smith. Published, no, he published the Book of Mormons in 1840, which gathered many followers in Kirtland, Ohio. No, 1844, Smith died at the hands of his enemies the time who were against in polygamy, which according to him was a revelation to him. We can see here that why it was called the cult. First is the Book of Mormons. He written it because he said that it is a revelation of God to him. No, and the second one is because his revelation to him led him to polygamy. And we can see as in our doctrine that polygamy is not accepted. And because of this uh, his claim, he died to his enemies during 1844, but it did not end this cult's life or the Mormons. They continually grow through the succession of Brigham Young. He is the successor of Smith. In his leadership, the aggressive missionary work started, and we can see how active the missionary work of Mormons up to this time. We can see uh, many foreigners wearing white long sleeves with a necktie, you know, roaming around everywhere. And and according to what I've learned, the Mormons has this rule or policy that before you graduate in college or before you go into college, you need to engage in a missionary work for 2 years. They are strict to that. We have a friend that undergo uh 2 years of mission in Korea, Mormons in Korea, before he graduated college. So the other one is Seventh Day Adventist. It is founded by William Miller, a farmer by profession who studied the Bible focused on Daniel and Revelation. No, he was convicted that Christ was going to return to earth 2,300 years after Ezra's return to Jerusalem in 457 BC. This gave him the date of 1843 as the year of Christ's return. Many thousand people accepted his idea and began to prepare for the coming of Christ. We can see that Seventh-day Adventists started with a bent theology. That's why they are considered that time as cults. And we can see the claim of William Miller is quite absurd for us. We can see that, as we all know, Christ will return like a thief. We don't know, but here we can see that he declared the date, and many people believed in him. And sadly, during the date he gave, everything he said did not happen. Therefore, it led to the creation of another cult that we will discuss later. But then you can see here how bent their theology is. But they did not stop there. No, they still continue to live, and I believe that they are also considered as evangelicals today because they have corrected their theologies well, their major theologies, and we can see that they became they are not considered to be a cult anymore now, and we can see that uh, that Miller was succeeded by Ellen White. During her leadership, the belief that Sabbath or Saturday in our calendar is the right day of rest because they followed the Hebrew calendar that the last day is Saturday. And what was the cult that was born out of Seventh-day Adventists? It is the Jehovah's Witnesses, founded by Christian Taz Russell. During the time that the vision of Miller did not come into reality, he declared his independence. No, rejected the teaching about hell and denied Trinitarian theology. He also interpreted the second coming in accordance with literal translation of the original Greek term parousia, or presence, suggested that Christ would come as invisible presence and that the parousia, or millennial dawn, already had occupied in 1874, which was the time I think that the Jehovah's Witnesses was founded. The coming of Christ, invisible presence, signaled the end of the current order of society and would be followed by his visible presence and the establishment of the millennial kingdom in 1914. Oh, we can see here why we consider this as a cult, because he rejected the teaching of hell and denied the Trinitarian theology. They only believe in Jehovah. No, there's only one God. No, there's no another expression but Jehovah. They believe Jesus Christ was also created. They also say that Jehovah's Witnesses was the modern Arianism. No, that only Jesus Christ is not a divine being, and they believe that Holy Spirit is some like electrocute power that pushes you. No, it's that Holy Spirit is not a God. So what are the other Russell formed a group named Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. So we can see here that Jehovah's Witnesses was not actually named Jehovah's Witnesses at first. They were the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. Then Joseph Franklin Rutherford, successor of Russell, who changed its name in Jehovah's Witnesses. This name means Jehovah, the one true God, and witnesses are the specially chosen followers. His remarkable work was building evangelists for this cult. Nathan Homer Knorr, 1942, successor of Rutherford. During his time, Bible school dedicated for the cult was born, named Watchtower Bible School of Gilead, located in South Lansing, New York. And during his time, a new translation of Jehovah's Witnesses Bible was published. We can see here the development of Jehovah's Witnesses. No, the first, no, and the second successor was the development of its name and the mission. And in Nathan Homer Knorr is development of their theological grounds, where it was born in the School of Gilead. Now we can see this is the time where they built their theology. And to support their theology, they made a new translation of the Bible. We can see that's why it's a cult. No? Because they tried to modify the Bible for their own sake to support their theology. Unlike us, that we aim to change our mind or theology if it is not according to the Bible or the revelation of God Himself. So these are the major cults that has been addressed in the Bible. But again, Seventh Day Adventist is not a cult anymore. they change their major doctrines, and I've been trying to search it, but I can find. But we can see their theology is almost the same as us. The only difference now is that uh is that they still not change the day of their worship. It is still a Saturday. That's the only difference we see in them. But then how they worship, they have also liturgy. They support uh they support eschatological and Trinitarian faith also. So that's all in my report. So may God bless you all, and I hope you learned something in me, and God bless you all.